Welcome to the Geek 101 podcast, episode 232. What is a video game movie? Hey, you know Pac-Man? I'm Ariel Rada.
And I'm Andy Bowman.
And today we are going to discuss what is a video game movie exactly. I think we define video game movies as movies based off of video games, but maybe there's more to it. But before that, we do have news, and Andy, why don't you start us off with a bit of controversial comic book movie or book movie news?
Okay, Snow Crash is getting a TV series. That's the controversy you were talking about, right, Ariel?
Oh yeah, definitely controversial here. Snow Crash, of course, the famous sci-fi book by Neil Stephenson. Andy, can you give me a quick what is Snow Crash about?
It is a late capitalist dystopian future book about a pizza delivery man who has a bomb strapped to his neck.
Sure, and it also kind of takes place in a Ready Player One-esque virtual world, right?
Ariel, it has been over a decade since I've read it, so...
Yeah, and so that was like the big selling point, and that's the big selling point of I'm guessing, of the show. It is satirical, but also, this is a content warning, because there was a hypersexualization of a 15-year-old girl in the book, and the girl does get into these ridiculous sexual relations, and to me, I don't care if you're a satire, that's not an acceptable thing to have in a book.
When you're reading it and you're 14, you don't notice that part.
Oh yeah, sure, but like to me, that's like it's gross, right? I don't think we need to actually have a 15-year-old character, one, become a sex object in the eyes of people, and two, like act on those like sex object desires with grown men. The violence is turned to 11, the sex is turned to 11 in Snow Crash. I don't like it. I don't think it's good. I read 75% of it, put it down, and threw it away. But yeah, that's me. A lot of people like this book, and I'm sure people will be hyped for it.
Well, I think part of the reason why people were hyped for it is this was like in the early 90s, this was like literature in science fiction. This was this gave legitimacy to sci-fi.
Which is like, I read like, so I go on like a lot of like book, like reddit.com/books or book suggestions or whatever. And this was always one that came up, and it was just like, it's quite a reminder that places like Reddit are predominantly, for lack of a better phrase, like straight white males. And it's undeniable. It's like literally their demographic. And so I do not always vibe with their recommendation list.
Right. But let's talk about the actual controversy. The real thing that I'm fascinated with and I want to talk about. Orlando Jones reported that he got fired from American Gods Season 3.
Yeah, so American Gods has been in showrunner turmoil. Initially, the showrunner was Brian Fuller, who has done such projects as the Hannibal series, which is brilliant, and of course Pushing Daisies, with both Andy and I are big fans of. He was pushed out to budgetary concerns, and instead they picked up showrunner, I think Michael Green is his name, to do season 1. Season 2, Andy, do you remember who exactly was the showrunner?
Fuller got to do season 1.
Oh, so he did get to the credit for season 1.
Right. Green did season 2, and now this other guy, Egley or Eagly,
Okay, so it was Fuller and Michael Green for season 1.
Right.
Showrunner for season 2 was a man named Jesse Alexander, whose credits include Heroes and Alias.
Okay.
I did not watch season 2 because I could tell after season 1 I was no longer interested in what was going to happen in the show. There were diminishing returns, I think it's safe to say, from the beginning of season 1 to the end of season 1. And then the third season we have here is, oh gosh, this is the one where it's hard to find the guy. Do you have his name?
Yeah, it's Eglee. Eglee.
Charles Eglee. Okay. Yep. Charles Eglee, the showrunner for season 3, fired Orlando Jones from American Gods season 3, who plays Anansi, the spider god, who had the best scene in season 1.
Absolutely.
It was one of the best scenes I've seen on TV. Quote, and this is Mr. Nance, Orlando Jones's quote, that the character sends the wrong message for Black America. Just so you know, Charles Eglee, if you Google him, is as white can be. And so this Orlando Jones and a lot of other Black people, of course, and a lot of people got really frustrated because what right does this person have to tell Orlando Jones what the message is for Black America? He has no say in that matter. And I'll refer you to articles by the Blurred Girls and a company that I write for called Nerdy POC. They are having Black writers write on this. This is not my place nor Andy's place to really delve into, but certainly it is worth mentioning that this is an asinine firing, and it's unbelievable that this is happening to Orlando Jones and to the American Gods season 3.
Right. Did you see what the rep for Eglee said?
The rep said, no, I did not. What did he say?
Okay. Basically, in Jones's statement, he also mentions, he's like, I'm not going to name names, but the new season 3 showrunner is a Connecticut-born and Yale-educated, so he's very smart, and he thinks that Mr. Nancy's angry, get shit done, blah, 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 is wrong for Black America. Well, a rep for Eglee has also released a statement claiming Mr. Jones is wrong on multiple counts, the least of which is that Mr. Eglee was not born in Connecticut.
That's just so unbelievable.
Right. It's such a non-response. Like,
yeah. The character of the Jinn has also been, let's say, is not returning, right, for season 2. The actor Musa Karish plays a Jinn, a being of fire, who is not only a Middle Eastern god, right? A Jinn is presumably like the source of the phrase genie, but he also, is let's just put this, a LGBTQ representation in the show. He's also not returning.
Right. A very graphic LGBTQ.
Yeah, very, 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 very graphic. That was a strange plot point in book and movie, I think. But then not only that, we have new casting for a goddess in season 3. Excuse me, jeez. Now I can't find it. But basically, they're doing an African goddess and cast a light-skinned Black woman, and that is just not kosher, so to speak. That's just not how. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just not historically accurate, right? It's just not. It's kind of gross. They did have the previous African goddess Bilqis, played by Yetide Badaki, and she is a dark-skinned African looking woman, similar to how we expect someone like Storm to be portrayed, who grew up in Africa and is portrayed as an African goddess. It's just the optics behind what's happening in the show are really, really, really bad.
Right. And another thing is that Orlando Jones was not just an actor, he was also a writer on the show.
Yes, and they did not want to bring him back for writing, and they had to pay him as a writer because he was in the Writers Guild. Mm-hmm. And that's also part of why they didn't bring him back. Ooh, breaking news. Lord of the Rings has cast Morfydd Clark as a young Galadriel.
Morfydd Clark. Oh, yes, of the Clarks.
I don't know, but she is from his Dark Materials, which I have yet
Oh,
to watch. She looks like a young, what's her name? Kate Blanchett. There we go. Kate Blanchett. So, interesting. But yeah, American Gods. If you did not get off the train, I suggest that you do so now. Not a great look.
Right. And just so you're aware, Morfydd Clark, that is a Welsh name, so good luck Googling it.
Yeah, it's
Oh, she was in Crawl.
Oh, was she the lead in Crawl?
I believe no, she was not. Okay, never mind. Crawl was really fun.
Okay, interesting. She is in she's in the Dracula miniseries coming out.
Oh, perfect.
Plays Mina Harkless? Whatever. Mina in the Dracula show coming up. Interesting. I'll be watching that for sure. But let's get on to our main topic today, Andy. But before we do that, what is a quick way that the listener can help our show?
Okay, guys, it's the holiday times. I know you've got a lot of time with friends and family. Well, perfect time to introduce and steer the conversation to the Geek 101 podcast, your favorite podcast. So, you should do that. Find places to fit that into the conversation, right? If someone mentions Star Wars, you can say, well, on the Geek 101 podcast, co-host Ariel loves The Last Jedi, and you should get his take on The Last Jedi from from the episode. Or, little Timmy likes Marvel movies. Well, tell little Timmy that he should go on his parents' iPod and download the Geek 101 podcast.
Yes, so downloads and word of mouth are the two best ways to have our show grow. And if you can do that, please, 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 please do so. Let's get into our main topic, Andy. What is a video game movie? And we've got two kind of directions to take this and two ways we'll be exploring it. We're going to give you some examples of our favorite quote-unquote video game movies. Spoiler alert, almost none of them will be actual video game adaptations. So Andy, what is your take on what a video game movie is?
Okay. I think a video game movie is a movie that uses the trope and structures and general feeling of a interactive medium we know as video games to tell a story in a non-interactive, cinematic experience.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you give them like the other kind of convention that you were talking about off air.
Sorry, I'm completely drawing a blank here, Ariel.
Basically how like the plot is like how a movie portrays the plot similar to how a video game would convey the plot.
That the plot is hyper structured so that there are, from the get-go, you have the goal is right there, is set in stone, and the path to get to that goal, the progression, is also there, right? In one of the movies we'll talk about, Scott Pilgrim, you got the 7 evil X's. In another movie we'll talk about, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, you've got the actual levels laid out in front of you.
Yeah, a lot of these movies, right, besides something like a heist movie, which is very clearly defined, are movies with a very set goal in mind, with a very simple quest, so to speak, objectives that the player needs to reach, side quests that the player will be pulled aside to see if he wants to focus on the side quest or not, and even perhaps for something like Fallout or Fable or something like that, the issue of morality and how you want the character to progress. Knights of the Old Republic, an RPG of that sort. The other way to look at this is to take something with video game conventions, a video game feel, video game imagery, and create a movie using those things. And doing so, nice. Andy put something in notes to make me laugh. And doing so that enhances a story being told, and it's not just some ridiculous plot that they're stealing from a video game. All right, Andy, what is a video game movie to you? And how does it fit into one of our two definitions?
Okay. Ariel, I'm just going to go ahead and take the most obvious low-hanging fruit here. Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, so this is the one that we both immediately thought of. I think it fits both of our definitions of what a video game movie is in terms of the structuring of the plot and the inclusion of video game things such as stat upgrades, a katana, pixelation, 8-bit music, things like that. It has video game aspects, little awesome details, leveling up, people playing video games in the movie, a quest, boss levels. I think boss levels is another way to look at something. Like, did you go through all the bosses? Blah, blah, blah. That's an interesting way to put it. Scott Pilgrim, probably my favorite movie on this list. One of my favorite movies ever. It's definitely my personal top 10. When it comes to time to look at the decade, this is definitely there as well. Early in the decade of 2010. Just a great example of both iterations of our definitions.
Yeah. Plus, it's one of the most unique movies. Like, out of all of these are some visually interesting movies, but I think Scott Pilgrim is the one that lands it the hardest. Right? That, like, sticks the landing the best.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. Like I mentioned before, this one actually takes, like, real-life existing video game imagery in a way that a lot of video game movies are scared to do. There's a one-up symbol, right? He's getting a life. There's a bar where he like when he has to go pee, there's like a little life bar that drains when he pees, like things like that. There's it's hard to explain, but the conventions of going through the plot, meeting new characters, beating bosses, final boss, saving the princess, so to speak, probably tries to turn that on its head a little bit. It's just such a great exploration of what makes video games great, and at no point is it referencing an actual video game plot.
Right. And another thing, I think, with video game movies particularly, there is a distinct lack of grounding in reality, right? Like everything is based in reality in video games because we have to compare it to our own experiences. So it's just heightened a little bit in different and weird ways.
Yeah, and what I like about most of the movies on this list, like you said, almost like Fast and the Furious, where at no point are they trying to ground something in reality, like you mentioned. A movie that doesn't do this great is something like The Dark Knight, where if you were to sit down and write all the plotting of what happens in that movie, like step by step, there's a lot of things that just don't line up, don't make sense. How did this happen? This was impossible. But the story is told so well that you kind of forget in the moment. But I still think you have to take points away, right? If you were grading it, whatever, if you were a teacher grading it, you still got to take points away because you want this crazy grounded reality of Batman, and it's gritty and it's real. And yet, a lot of your things just don't make sense and would not happen in a real world. Scott Pilgrim doesn't care.
Right.
It really, really doesn't. And sometimes that's great and sometimes that's not. And I think in this aspect where somebody literally gets, like an extra life and summons a sword from his chest, like, that's okay.
Yeah. And Ariel, it's interesting to me that you brought up The Dark Knight, because another movie by the same director that I think the major flaw in the movie is very much the same, where it's a little too grounded, is actually Inception. Right?
Yeah.
If you actually think about, something that is very grounded in reality, and let's think of this as a continuum, right? You have the most grounded in reality, and then what's the opposite of that? I would say dream logic.
Yeah.
Inception should be using dream logic, but instead, I believe it's using video game logic.
Can you explain how it's specifically using video game logic?
Well, I I mean, first of all, the general hyper structuredness of everything, right? That everything is very set piece oriented, but also very self-contained within its own little segment, right? These different dreams are almost clearly levels, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And while it's still more heightened than just a grounded reality where everything is a one-to-one to our world, it doesn't reach the bizarreness that could be captured by dream logic.
Yeah, almost in a weird way to its, I don't want to say to its detriment. It certainly could have been more visually outstanding. I do like the logic that they gave it, where it's just like, and this is a real video game line, right? Where if someone's playing a video game story and something like was like, why don't we just pretend we have superpowers and we have them? Where they like, if you change too much, the guy wakes up, right? He realizes he's in a dream and he wakes up. Like, that's a brilliant little line, and it happens to everybody. Where if I'm dreaming and I'm having like this terrible, very stressful dream, and this happens to me all the time, and I just think, I was like, oh wait, like, I'm not stuck at this house with my car broken down in Oklahoma, right? In a random building. Like, I'm home in my bed and I can go to work tomorrow, and I wake up. Like, that's such a cool thing that Nolan mentions in the film, and would definitely be mentioned in a video game too. Like, let's, for example, like, limit your powers to the confines of what the video game's, code is allowed to do. Stuff like that, I think is really interesting. But it is curious the line that they try to toe between real logic and dream logic.
Right. So in my mind, really, video game logic is this halfway between real grounded material and dream logic. Right?
Yeah.
It is a heightened version of reality, but it's not so incredibly crazy most of the time that it could be considered dream logic. And I think Inception was an interesting one to bring up in this conversation, because I think that really shows exactly what we're thinking of when we talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Is there anything else about Inception?
No. It was a fine movie.
I think the very defined roles of the characters in the movie are also reminiscent of a video game. Something we'll talk about later in another couple of movies.
Yeah, some way more than others.
Yeah, for sure. But like, it's definitely a game where you're controlling. You have the option to control multiple characters.
Yeah. You've got the chemist, played by Tom Hardy. You've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who plays the Zero G. What was his actual role?
I don't think Tom Hardy is the chemist in Inception. The chemist is literally a chemist. Tom Hardy he's a fence. His specialty is he's the impersonator. He's the actor.
Okay, yeah, I have no idea why I thought he was the chemist. He is the last chemist, one they get, right?
I don't remember. I haven't seen that movie in a while. It's probably worth a rewatch.
Yeah, well,
I'll probably do it next year.
Yeah, 10-year anniversary next year.
Yeah. Yeah, but you have the architect in Ellen Page's character. You have so Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character he manages and researches the missions.
Oh, wow. Oh, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's the nerd. I get it.
Sure, yeah. Tom Hardy is the actor. Ken Watanabe is the bankroller. Things like that, right? Very very specified roles. You think of something like Team Fortress. While not exactly the same type of plotting, very very specified roles.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go on to another movie, Ariel.
Yeah, so another movie I wanted to mention is, of course, Wreck-It Ralph.
I'm gonna wreck it.
I'm gonna wreck it. Very clearly a video game movie, as in it is. See, this would be interesting if they had like a Dig Dug movie and they made it just like this, right? And like an old school like Dig Dug or Pac-Man or something, and this is the type of movie that they made. Essentially, it's what they did, right? They created an old video game, or I think a really great one would be the original Donkey Kong game where you're controlling Mario. Like, and the movie's called Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong is just going from video game to video game. He doesn't want to be the bad guy anymore. Like, instead they created Wreck-It Ralph, who's a very clear analog for that type of character.
Ariel, that wasn't Mario. That was Jumpman.
Oh, Jumpman, sorry. But you know what I mean. If you don't know, Google it. But yeah, I mean, it is, it just takes all these really cool video game set pieces and tells a story that actually makes sense and uses video game characters in a way that makes sense instead of trying to just emulate what made the video game successful.
Yeah, and I mean it does so with such a wink and a nod towards the audience that, there is even that Bad Guys Anonymous meeting.
Yeah, just because you're a bad guy does not mean you're a bad guy. It's so good. It's so clever. The writing's really fun. It has an awesome bad guy. I mean, it's almost got a Kingdom Hearts-esque feel to it. By the way, Kingdom Hearts, like I had a debate with somebody. Somebody was like, "Yeah, Kingdom Hearts is this really great, awesome story," and I was like, "Kingdom Hearts story makes no sense, and you literally can't tell me it does." And you
hold on, I will tell you that it does, and I will explain.
Oh my gosh! We're not doing this.
It makes perfect sense if you take every sentence and just contain it within that own sentence by itself. Okay, you don't just every sentence. You just take that for that sentence alone, and you don't tie it to any other part.
So the problem with Kingdom Hearts is that in order to understand the story in any possible way, you have to play like 50 billion games.
I've done that,
and it's just like it's just like I can't tell you a damn thing about it. I have no idea. I know there are keys. I know there are worlds, and I know that there's a darkness. And if you want to condense it to that, sure. But other than that, But yeah, Wreck-It Ralph, I think, is a big one that is not technically a video game movie, but certainly should be mentioned among them.
Right. Right. Next up, we have the Emoji Movie.
Oh, gosh. Did you watch it?
No.
Oh, all right.
The only thing I know about the Emoji Movie, besides there's this horrible Candy Crush segment in it, is T.J. Miller, star of the Emoji Movie, and a parent monster. And also in Silicon Valley, he and Kumail Nanjiani both had a movie come out on the same weekend. Kumail Nanjiani's movie, The Big Sick, had like a 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. And TJ Miller tweeted out that you can combine the two Silicon Valley stars movies for a total of 106% on Rotten Tomatoes. So suck it, critics.
Now that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Emoji Movie's not making the cut, but perhaps Pixels does. By Adam Sandler and Kevin James and all. No, I didn't watch Pixels. Did you?
No, but I know Josh Gad Bones Kubert.
Yeah, no, not great. Let's move on to an actual movie that we've both seen and I think fits the conventions of our definition of a video game movie, and that is Hardcore Henry.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, Hardcore Henry I'm going to lump with a movie called Upgrade. Have you seen that, Andy?
No, I haven't, but I've heard that it's a better version of Venom.
Oh, yeah, it's really good. So Hardcore Henry, you basically wake up the movie's entirely in first person. You are a guy named Henry, and since it's in first person, you are kind of experiencing it like you're playing a first person RPG. There's a very, there's a lot of henchmen and there's a lot of like robotics and cybernetics, and you have a goal and you have to rescue someone. You have to take revenge. It is very like paint by numbers, like sci-fi shoot 'em up first person shooter. But it is really interesting. There's like some supernatural elements to it. But I do think that if somebody made this movie and it was like, if this was an actual video game and they made the same exact movie, I think this would be the best video game movie ever. What?
Yeah, I agree with that. I can't think of too much more to add other than if you get motion sickness, don't watch this movie.
Yeah, it's not easy. I watched it in the theater, and I think it'd probably be better at home. Did you watch it at home or the theater?
Yeah. I watched it at home, but the problem with being at home at that point in time in my life was that I was drunk. So that was a very confusing hour and a half. It is a crisp, clean hour and a half.
Okay.
And I don't really remember too much about it. It was definitely really interesting, though.
Yeah, it's a very simple story. It's got like horde. There's a horde level, and there are mini bosses, and there's a final boss, and it's very much set up like a video game.
Yeah. I remember it playing out like the one extended scene in the Doom movie from 2004.
Yeah, but this is
good.
This is pretty good.
Yeah. Sholto Copley is awesome.
Yeah, he was really fun in it. Another video game movie that just had a sequel that came out, which apparently is just about as good, but you know, that's not a great thing to say about its predecessor, is the Jumanji, was it Welcome to the Jungle?
Yes,
movie?
Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle.
All right. Andy, why don't you take this one? What are your thoughts and how Jumanji movie fits into our definition?
Well, it's literally taken, like a video game is the key portion of this, but when the characters get in the video game, those who are unfamiliar with the story of Jumanji, this is not your Robin Williams Jumanji. This is a new Jumanji where the people go into the game and not just Robin Williams going into the game. But when these teenagers get into a video game, they are given certain classes for the avatars. You've got The Rock, who is basically playing The Rock. You've got Kevin Hart, who's playing a zoologist. You've got Jack Black, who plays a cartographer. You've got Karen Gillan from Doctor Who and the Avengers, who is playing a femme fatale. But they have very specific strengths and weaknesses, and their entire goal is to get through all these different levels to get a item and beat the game. Like, that is it. It is laid out at the very beginning. Every path, every step they need to take. It's just super hyper visualized, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think so. This is another one of those movies, right? Where if this movie was called Final Fight or Streets of Rage or Golden Axe instead of Jumanji, and you made basically the same exact movie, this would be the best video game movie of all time.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It perfectly adapts a very specific era of video games into movies.
Yeah, it is. It's really fun. It is a clever way, and it's exactly the type of spirit of a quote unquote video game movie that studios should look at and try to emulate when they are actually adapting a video game movie.
Yeah. And I went to go see the second one, and it is the exact same as the first one. If you liked the first one, the second one is not bad at all.
Yeah, I certainly think that theoretically there are diminishing returns. You gotta go make your money.
Right.
Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, whatever.
Right. The diminishing returns in this case are it not being a pleasant surprise, because the first one was just a huge pleasant surprise. Like, nobody expected the movie to be any good, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And this one, sure, you kind of know going in what it's all about.
Yeah. What's another one here? Another video game movie or movie that matches what we're looking at here.
Okay, Ariel. From both of our favorite directors, Mr. Zachary Snyder.
Gosh.
He made what I consider to be the ultimate mix of video game and music video in Sucker Punch?
Dude, people really thought Sucker Punch was going to be good.
I thought it was going to be good, Ariel. I went to go see it opening weekend.
Oh, well, there you go. I did not think it was going to be good.
It's got a great soundtrack.
It does. And it's got some pretty cool visuals. And I think if Zack Snyder just tried making the movie that we all thought he was going to make, it probably would have been received a lot better. But alas, he did not. But can you explain the plot to Sucker Punch? Because I genuinely believe there are people listening to this who are like, yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Okay, so Sucker Punch takes place, okay, Sucker Punch takes place in a all-female insane asylum. Well,
like an old school insane asylum,
right, like 1930s, right? Well, they find out that there is a lobotomist coming. Played by Oscar Isaac, by the way. Or no, John Hamm, sorry. Oscar Isaac is in this movie, though. But there's a lobotomist coming to lobotomize them, and so they have to escape. Well, all these girls, because they're mentally unwell, they're imagining, okay, we need to get the keys, we need to get the other things to help us escape, and they imagine it as video game levels, pretty much. Each one of the four things that they need, one of the four items that they need, they imagine it as being a very specific, stylized set piece. Like, one is they're on a train and there's cyborg Nazi zombies.
Yeah, literally. Like, that's what they... That's not like a fake example.
Right. And it's beautiful action. You know, let's see here. They need a map, fire, a key, a knife, and another item. And they just go through these different vignettes, which are really cool. Like, yeah, it's a steampunk World War One. I mean, that's the one that really sticks in my head. Like, there's another super fantasy world where the girls are scantily clad, and it makes me uncomfortable thinking about it now. There's a feudal Japan area. Like, it's so bizarre and is so just it's what video games from the 80s would be if their cover art accurately depicted what the game was.
That's a perfect description. Ultimately, the movie's a mess. It really doesn't like portray the women in a great light. It's really super duper like male gaze. It has a really strong male gaze, and what that means is like upskirt shots and focusing on boobs and butts and stuff. And it's just like, what year did the movie come out?
2011.
Yeah, if you told me 1995, I would kind of understand it more. 2011 is not, like, it's just way too recent to be able to kind of forgive that type of behavior.
Yeah. It's a movie that I'm kind of uncomfortable thinking about now, because the four leads are all women. Like, it's great. It's Emily Browning, Abby Cornish, Jenna Malone, Vanessa Hudgens. You know, it's great. This was pitched as being a very, woman empowerment action movie, and instead it was directed by a guy who really wanted to get these girls in various skimpy male fantasy scenarios and outfits, and yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Ready Player One is another movie that, it's, first of all, it was a book, and it was a book designed to be based off of video games. The movie itself does not look like it is made by people who know what video games play like.
Yeah. I would say that of all these movies we've listed, 3 of them are actually from people who know what video games play like. And that's Scott Pilgrim, the crew behind Jumanji, and the Wreck-It Ralph.
I think Hardcore Henry.
Okay. I really don't remember it well enough to comment.
I think the way that the set pieces and the final boss battle goes, you have to like, oh yeah, this guy definitely plays like modern first person shooters. Like Ready Player One is the most video gamey source material, except for maybe Wreck-It Ralph. And it's the one thing on this list that I think is least in touch with what actually video games are. Just so sad. It's so depressing.
Right. I mean, Steven Spielberg shouldn't have been behind this, really.
No, it should have been Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright's Ready Player One would have been the greatest sci-fi movie ever made. I will go to my grave. Like, that's the greatest hypothetical sci-fi movie ever. Right. But alas, we'll have to settle for Scott Pilgrim, which is still amazing.
Yeah.
Another quick one as I was looking at like 2010s like sci-fi movies. I think Repo Man, I think you can certainly fit in here a little bit.
I didn't see it. Tell me more.
Oh, you haven't seen it. Repo Man. Basically, a Repo Man is a guy so basically the world is in a place where when organs fail, you get expensive what's called artiforgs, which are artificial organs. They are incredibly expensive. It's like buying a house. If you default on your loans for your artificial organ, they get repoed. And when they get repoed, they hunt you down and they literally cut out the property and leave you to die. Jude Law plays a Repo Man, a great one. His partner, Forrest Whitaker, is also the pair of the best ones. On the job, Jude Law's character, Remy, gets heart failure and has to get an artificial organ. And lo and behold, he gets turned on by the company when he cannot pay for his artificial organ. But the way that the movie goes, it's almost, a lot of it is like paint by numbers, like a paint by numbers action film. I think the sci-fi premise and the way the film ends make it feel like a video game. But it's very clear, like, you start off the plot this way. The first mission ends in a way that you don't expect, and you wake up and the stakes have changed. Right? That's a very like modern day sci-fi video game trope. And then since your situation has changed, you have to restart. You wake up with no weapons. You're on the run. You're up against your organization. There's henchmen. There's a mini boss. There's a final boss. Things like that.
Okay. Ariel, I actually have 2 more movies I didn't put on our Google Doc that I'd like to talk about really quick.
All right, let's hear them before we get out of here.
Okay. Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh, Edge of Tomorrow. That's the one. I was looking at my list and I was like, man, I made a list of the best video game movies ever. I had Scott Pilgrim, I had Wreck-It Ralph, I had Hardcore Henry, I had Jumanji, and I had one more and I couldn't remember, and it's definitely Edge of Tomorrow.
Right. Edge of Tomorrow, I mean, to me, it even harkens back more towards the 80s, where the 80s arcade games where they were designed to take your quarters. Because the main premise is that a man played by Tom Cruise gets thrown into a war against aliens, that he is incompetent at being a soldier. But when he dies, he discovers that he basically Groundhog Days. It's a time loop. So from that moment on, he ends up getting the end goal, which would be the end goal of the game, right? He finds where the final boss is, what he has to do, and he goes through basically the first level over and over and over and over again in so many different ways, in so many beautifully unique ways. And to me, that'd be like, pumping quarters in a video game, really.
Yeah, but not only that, it really harkens back to the feeling of like of doing a really tough like first person shooter level.
Yeah.
Like if you had made, I don't know, Gears of War or Killzone, right? Killzone, a property nobody's really ever watched. Or Call of Duty, right? If you made a Call of Duty movie where it's not aliens and it's soldiers, and you have this guy keep having to do this one mission where he dies over and over and over again, and eventually like he completes the mission by perfecting every single thing that's done, it's almost like either a Mario speedrun or like doing a hardcore like insane or veteran or whatever version of a Call of Duty mission.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. Activision, contact us.
Yeah, so like I said, if this was Call of Duty Modern Warfare, if this was the thing you made, like this would be the best video game movie of all time.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Unfortunately, it is only just a weird adaptation of a Japanese novel, but I will take that.
Yeah, yeah. What is your last one here, Andy?
Crank, 2006.
Oh, Crank, that's a good one. That's a good one. So give us. I'll give it to you. Jason Statham's character, who we'll just refer to as Jason Statham because he plays the same type of person in everything he's in, is in trouble with somebody who I think owes him money or he owes money, whatever. What happens is he gets caught with this virus that makes it so that his heart rate has to be above a certain level or else he will die. And so as a result, he keeps having to go around and do things that keep his adrenaline levels really, really high so that he doesn't die and he can get the antidote. So if the guy put in a situation, got to get the antidote.
It's such a great movie.
It's like so ridiculous, and a lot of people think it's a bad movie. It could be, right? It could be a stupid movie, but it also knows exactly what it is.
Right. I mean, this is I believe this is like a giant test screening or tryout for the Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Very, very similar tone.
Yeah. And definitely, if you've ever played a Grand Theft Auto and have gotten, 5-star wanted level or whatever, and the tanks are coming and the Navy's coming and there's bombs everywhere, that's what this game feels like. Or that's what this movie feels like.
Yeah, interesting choice. Definitely fits the narrative. If you, dear audience, have an example of a video game movie or a movie that fits one of the definitions that we have provided you here with, please let us know, and we'll let you know the tags and whatever, the Twitter names, whatever, in just a second. Andy, any closing thoughts before we move on to homework?
Movies we will not accept include actual adaptations of video games, John Wick, and The Raid Redemption.
Yeah, or heist movies.
That is a subject for a different episode that we will be having, Ariel.
Yeah. I would actually, like, for example, if you gave us if we got a Mortal Kombat movie that went from like set piece to set piece featuring like good versus evil martial arts fights, and that was like most of the movie, I would accept that because it's copying the convention of what that video game is about. But alas, nobody's ever done it.
Well, maybe the one that comes out in 2021 will.
Yeah, maybe. But if for example, if Hardcore Henry, if it was, like I said, if it was exactly the same thing, except it was, I don't know, Killzone, like we mentioned, I think I would, because it fits the spirit and is an adaptation.
Yeah. But we do have 3 video game movies coming up in the next year, Ariel.
Oh no, what are they?
Oh, do you not remember?
One is Sonic.
Right, one is Sonic.
The
other one is supposedly the Uncharted movie.
Oh, that's not getting made.
Okay. But
I bet you money.
I'm not going to take that bet. But the final movie in this trilogy of video game movies this year is Monster Hunter.
Oh, Monster Hunter. Yeah, you hurt my soul. Monster Hunter is my favorite game of all time, dear audience. And this movie looks terrible. I think getting the spirit of what makes the game great is more important than even, for example, having a movie that makes sense. And that's me, right? Your movie has to make sense for me to enjoy. I think the more important thing is the spirit of the character.
Yeah. There's no way that this 2 groups work together to defend a portal, thwarting monsters from entering and invading Earth. That's the plot.
It's so dumb. A Monster Hunter movie there should not be modern day soldiers with guns in a Monster Hunter movie. Sorry. Not sorry. What's the Sonic, Monster Hunter, and what?
Uncharted.
Oh, Uncharted. Yeah. So 2 coming out next year. We do have Free Guy, which fits the conventions of our definitions, perhaps, but not an actual adaptation.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. We also do have the Pixar movie Onward, which I think it's unfair to consider that one because it's
more like yeah,
it's more of an adventure movie. But the newest trailer
like
for
D&D.
it looked really good.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. All right, let's do homework before we sign off here, Andy.
Okay. For homework, for me, I've been burning through The Witcher 3 in preparation for the Witcher TV series coming out on Netflix this Friday.
Oh yeah, I bought that game and I never, much like many other games on my Steam list, I just never touched it.
Ariel, it is the densest game I have ever played.
See, I don't have time for that.
No, you do not. I have put in 100 hours into this game.
I need, so this is why I'm kind of stuck playing games like Destiny or Monster Hunter, right? Like, one is I know what I'm expecting, and two, I can play for 10 minutes, a match, a hunt, a strike, whatever. I can get off. But like, I just bought Breath of the Wild, and it's still sitting unopened on my living room table because
yeah, no, it is Breath of the Wild levels of just dense with how much there is to do. Like, I get a certain amount of anxiety just thinking about all the stuff that there is to do and how I have to choose what to do next. However, the world is beautiful. The world is amazingly well crafted. This game is the product of so much love. But it's dense.
Yeah.
But Ariel, we should definitely cover the Witcher TV series at some point next year.
Oh yeah, for sure. My homework this week is a book, and in honor of Orlando Jones and Mr. Nancy, I encourage you to read either of Neil Gaiman's American Gods books. That one, the first one being American Gods, and the other one being Anansi Boys. I still don't know what I think about Neil Gaiman, despite reading 5 of his books. Isn't that like, it's just like, I read it, I'm like, oh, I can see why a lot of people like this. I don't know if I vibe with it yet. But I just keep giving it a shot.
Well, I just watched Coraline for the first time, which is based on a Neil Gaiman book.
Yeah, I've read Coraline. Coraline is like a very, very, very literal adaptation. Yeah. That is his easiest book to read.
Yeah, man. Neil Gaiman, like, on one end, he seems like one of the nicest people in the world. On the other end, he seems like so intellectual and heady that I don't think I could ever talk to him because I'd just be terrified of making a fool out of myself.
Yeah. For those of you who've never read Sandman, the thing that actually I think has transformed him from a pretty good author to like a household name author almost, which is a comic book, by the way, Sandman. You read through the whole thing, and I think you go, I'm not sure that was good. It's definitely not bad, but also I didn't get a lot of it. Like, you know, like that's the sense I get reading Sandman, and a couple of Neil Gaiman's other things. Like, it's definitely not bad. Like, I know it's not bad. But also, is it good? I don't know, you know?
Yeah. The world building in both of them are fantastic, though.
Oh, I think that is his thing. Where for him, plotting is almost a secondary device to look at how vast my imagination is. And I think that is definitely something to look at. A quick criticism of Neil Gaiman in American Gods specifically, the Jesus problem. Andy, I don't know if have you watched season 1 of American Gods?
Yes, I watched season 1.
Yeah, like when he tries to explain away the Jesus thing, like, it just doesn't make sense, right?
I really don't remember the Jesus thing getting explained away.
So basically, they try to make it so that you know, if you get prayers and you get praise and people like praise your image, like, you become a god. And there are different, you know, they try to explain, oh yeah, there's an American version of this and whatever, but like the character of Jesus, they play it off as there are like different Jesus is for different like cultures,
Yeah.
but that doesn't ever happen with any other god. It just doesn't make sense in the world. And he just ignores it in American Gods, because like otherwise the character of Jesus, the character of Mary, and the character of the Yeshua God, whatever, would just be so unbelievably powerful in the world of American Gods that it literally wouldn't fit. You have to explain away in a way that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. God, I really like the world for American Gods. It's a shame that we're not going to really get a chance to have a season 2 or a season 3.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Yep.
Well, we did get season 2.
No, Ariel.
Oh, okay. We didn't get season 2.
No. It was canceled after season 1. Weird.
Okay.
Denial is the best way, Ariel.
Yeah, for sure. So that's our homework. Next week we are going to... Is our main episode going to be the review of Watchmen?
Unless Star Wars, Ariel.
I hate to break to you guys. I'm not going to watch that movie.
Yeah, so our main episode is going to be the review of Watchmen.
Andy, if you have a sub, by all means.
I will do my best. I will. We'll put out the Geek 101 signal and see. Maybe we can get some fans to come on.
Okay, all right. But let's get out of here, Andy. We kind of veered a little off topic here at the end. That was my fault. Where can people find you online?
People can find me online on Twitter or Letterboxd at Hebrews Paleo.
You can find me at Dread Pirate Roddy. You can find us at Geek 101 Podcast on Twitter and Facebook and Patreon. Email us geek101pod@gmail.com. That's all we have for today. Class dismissed.